Torvan had seen death before. He had walked through battlefields covered with the bodies of his brothers. He had held dying soldiers in his arms and watched the light leave their eyes. But nothing had prepared him for this. Vareth Prime was burning. The fortress world had stood for 6,000 years. It was the heart of the HFY Alliance, a symbol of their strength and pride. Now it was falling, piece by piece, into the hands of the Endless. Torvan stood on the outer wall and watched the enemy move across the plains below. They were not soldiers in the normal sense. They were shadows given form, darkness shaped into bodies that moved like living nightmares. The Endless had existed before the stars were born. They had consumed civilizations older than memory. And now they had come for the HFY. "How many did we lose today?" Torvan asked. General Kethros stood beside him, his scales gray with age and stress. 3,000. The eastern wall fell 2 hours ago. 3,000. That meant they had less than 4,000 soldiers left. When the siege began 3 weeks ago, they had 40,000. The Alliance? Torvan asked. They are sending reinforcements. A ship broke through the blockade an hour ago. For a moment, hope flickered in Torvan's chest. The Sundari fleet was the most powerful in the galaxy. Or perhaps the Oran Collective had finally decided to join the fight. Their technology could turn the tide. Who sent the ship? Torvan asked. Kethros did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened in a way that made Torvan's hope die before it could grow. Humans, Kethros said finally. Torvan blinked. Humans? The young species from the Outer Rim? The same. Torvan had heard of humans, of course. Everyone had. They were a curious species that had only discovered faster than light travel 3 centuries ago. They were small, fragile, and short-lived. Most species in the galaxy considered them a minor footnote in the great story of the cosmos. How many ships? Torvan asked. One ship against the Endless? Kethros turned and walked toward the landing zone. Come, they are arriving now. Torvan followed, his mind struggling to understand. 1 human ship. Against an enemy that had destroyed empires. It was not reinforcement. It was suicide. The landing zone was a flat area of scorched ground near the central fortress. HFY soldiers lined the edges, their weapons ready, their faces tired and hollow. They had been fighting for weeks without rest. Many of them would not survive another day. The human ship descended through the smoke-filled sky. It was small, barely larger than a HFY transport vessel. Burn marks covered its hull. One of its engines was sparking and damaged. It looked like it had fought through hell to reach them. The ship landed with a heavy thud. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the main door opened, and the humans stepped out. Torvan counted them. 47. 47 humans in battered armor, carrying weapons that looked old and worn. They moved with a strange energy, their steps quick and purposeful. Despite the destruction around them, dotted their front walked 2 humans. The first was a male with short dark hair and a scar running down his left cheek. His eyes were calm, almost peaceful, as if he was walking into a garden rather than a war zone. The second was a female with red hair tied back in a tight braid. She scanned the area with sharp eyes, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip. "I am Commander Danny Vance," the male said. "This is Lieutenant Megan Cole. We are here to help." General Kethros stepped forward. He towered over the humans by nearly 3 feet. His voice was cold when he spoke. 47 soldiers. Against the Endless. 47 is what we have, Vance replied. So 47 is what we brought. Do you understand what you are facing? The Endless cannot be killed. They do not feel pain. They do not know fear. They are the remnants of the beings who created this galaxy. They are gods. Vance looked at the burning horizon. The shadows of the Endless moved in the distance, endless and hungry. Then he looked back at Kethros and smiled. "We have killed gods before." Kethros made a sound of disgust and turned away. "Assign them to the western wall. Let them die with honor if they wish." Torvan watched the human commander. He expected to see fear, or perhaps regret. Instead, he saw something else. Something that made him uncomfortable. Vance was still smiling. "You find this amusing?" Torvan asked. Vance looked at him. "What is your name?" "Torvan." "I am a warrior of the 3rd Legion. Nice to meet you, Torvan." Vance extended his hand. Torvan had studied human customs enough to know this was a greeting. He took the hand carefully, surprised by the strength in the human's grip. "You did not answer my question," Torvan said. "I am not amused," Vance said. "I am grateful." "Grateful? You came here to die." "I came here because you needed help. That is a gift, not a burden." Vance released his hand and looked at his soldiers. They were already unpacking equipment, checking weapons, talking to each other in low voices. Some of them were laughing, in the middle of a battlefield, surrounded by death, facing an enemy that could not be defeated. They were laughing. "Your soldiers," Torvan said slowly. "They do not seem afraid." Lieutenant Cole appeared beside them. Her eyes were hard, but there was warmth underneath. "Fear is for people who have something to lose. We already made our peace with dying before we got on that ship. Then, why come at all?" Cole smiled. It was a strange smile, full of sadness and fire at the same time. "Because someone has to. And we would rather it be us than someone who still has hope." Torvan did not understand. He had fought beside many species in his long career. He had seen courage and cowardice in equal measure. But he had never seen anything like this. These humans had crossed a galaxy to die for strangers. They had no expectation of survival. They had no illusions about victory. And yet they came anyway. That night, as the sun set over the burning plains, Torvan watched the humans make camp near the western wall. They shared food with each other. They showed pictures of families they would never see again. They told jokes and stories as if they were sitting around a fire at home instead of waiting for death. And when the first shadows of the Endless appeared on the horizon, the humans stood up, checked their weapons, and walked calmly to the wall. Torvan followed them. He did not know why. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps something deeper. He wanted to see what these strange creatures would do when the gods came to kill them. The Endless attacked at midnight. They came like a black wave, thousands of shadow forms pouring across the plains toward the western wall. Their bodies shifted and changed as they moved, sometimes appearing as twisted humanoid shapes, sometimes as crawling nightmares with too many limbs. The sound they made was not a battle cry. It was something worse. It was silence. A terrible, hungry silence that ate sound itself. Torvan had fought them many times before. He knew the fear that came with facing an enemy that could not die. He had seen HFY warriors, the bravest soldiers in the galaxy, break and run when the Endless reached the walls. He expected the humans to do the same. He was wrong. Commander. Vance stood at the center of the wall, his rifle raised, his voice calm as he gave orders. Hold fire until they reach the 300 mark. Conserve ammunition. Pick your targets. Sir, one of the soldiers said, they regenerate. Our weapons do not kill them permanently. I know. We are not trying to kill them. We are trying to slow them down. Vance looked at the approaching horde with steady eyes. Make every shot count. The Endless crossed the 500 mark. 400. 350. Torvan's hands were shaking. He had fought in dozens of battles, but the fear never got easier. The Endless were not mortal enemies. They were something older. something that should not exist. 300. Fire, Vance said. The humans opened fire. The sound of their weapons filled the night, bright flashes of light cutting through the darkness. The Endless fell in waves, their bodies torn apart by plasma and bullets. But they did not stay down. Within seconds, the shadows reformed, pulling themselves back together. Continuing their advance, Torvan fired his own weapon, watching an endless creature explode into fragments only to reassemble moments later. This is pointless. They cannot be stopped. Watch, Lieutenant Cole said beside him. Torvan looked more carefully. The humans were not simply firing randomly. They were coordinating. One team would knock an Endless down, while another team moved forward to plant small devices on the ground. The devices hummed with energy. What are those? Torvan asked. Stasis traps. They do not kill the Endless, but they freeze them in place for a few hours. Cole fired 3 quick shots, dropping an Endless long enough for a soldier to plant another trap. We studied them. We found their weaknesses. Studied them? How? Cole smiled grimly. We captured one. Took us 2 years and 700 lives, but we captured one. Then we spent another year taking it apart. Torvan stared at her. The Endless were considered unstoppable. No species had ever thought to capture one, let alone study it. The idea seemed insane, but these were humans. The battle raged for hours. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked Torvan. They did not retreat when wounded. They did not hesitate when outnumbered. When one soldier fell, another took their place immediately, dragging the wounded to safety while continuing to fire. A young human named Kyle Mercer fought beside Torvan. He was barely more than a child by Kethvari standards, perhaps 20 years old. But he moved like a veteran, his rifle never stopping, his eyes never blinking. How old are you? Torvan asked during a brief pause in the fighting. 22, Mercer said. You fight like someone much older. Mercer laughed. It was a tired laugh, but genuine. I have been fighting since I was 16. Colony raids, pirate attacks, border wars. Humans do not get the luxury of peace. An Endless broke through the line nearby. It moved faster than the others, its form shifting into something with long claws and a mouth filled with darkness. It lunged toward Mercer. Torvan raised his weapon, but he was too slow. Mercer turned, dropped his rifle, and pulled a knife from his belt. The Endless crashed into him, claws tearing into his armor. Mercer drove the knife into the creature's head, twisted, and tore downward. The Endless fell apart. But so did Mercer. Torvan caught the young human as he collapsed. Blood poured from wounds on his chest and stomach. His eyes were already fading. Medic! Torvan shouted. Lieutenant Cole appeared. She knelt beside Mercer, her face tight with grief. Kyle, stay with me. Mercer coughed blood. He looked up at her and smiled. Did I get him? You got him. You did good. Good. Mercer's eyes found Torvan. Hey, big guy. Win this one for me, okay? Then he died. Torvan had seen death before. He had lost friends and brothers to battle. But something about watching this young human die, far from his home, fighting for strangers, struck him deeply. Cole closed Mercer's eyes. She was quiet for a long moment. When she stood up, her face had changed. The warmth was gone. What remained was something cold and hard. Commander, she said into her communicator. We lost Mercer. There was a pause. Then Vance's voice came through, quiet and steady. Understood. All units, advance. Torvan expected the humans to fall back. They had lost one of their own. The smart move was to consolidate, to protect the remaining soldiers. Instead, they pushed forward. The humans moved past the wall into the open ground where the Endless waited. They fought with a new intensity, their movements faster, their attacks more brutal. Torvan watched a soldier named Derek Shaw tackle an endless to the ground and tear it apart with his bare hands. "What are they doing?" Torvan asked. A human soldier nearby heard him. His name was Nathan Price, a quiet man who had barely spoken since arriving. He carried a rifle in one hand and a plasma torch in the other. "We are getting angry," Price said. "Angry?" Price looked at him. His eyes were empty, like windows into a dark room. "Humans have a thing we call spite. When someone hurts us, we hurt them back. Even if it kills us, even if it makes no sense, we will chase our enemies to the end of the universe just to make them pay." He turned back to the battle and walked forward into the darkness. Torvan stood there, surrounded by fire and shadow, and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Not of the endless fear of the humans. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting. 3 days of fire and blood and screaming darkness. The Kethvari soldiers rotated in shifts, grabbing a few hours of sleep whenever they could. Their bodies were designed for endurance, but even they had limits. The humans had no shifts. They did not rotate. They did not sleep. Tavam watched them with growing amazement and horror. By the second day, the humans were running on nothing but willpower. Their eyes were red and hollow. Their hands shook from exhaustion. But they kept fighting. "This is impossible," Torvan said to Lieutenant Cole. "Your species requires sleep. I have read the reports. Humans who go without sleep for more than 3 days begin to hallucinate. Their bodies start to fail." Cole was reloading her weapon. Her movements were slower than before, but still precise. "That is true. Then how are you still standing?" She smiled. It was a dangerous smile. "Have you ever heard of adrenaline?" "I have read about it. A chemical your bodies produce during stress. It is more than that. When humans are protecting something we care about, our bodies change. Our hearts beat faster. Our muscles get stronger. Pain becomes distant, like a voice in another room. We can push ourselves beyond what should be possible." She finished reloading and looked at him. "It will kill us eventually, but not today." Torvan did not know what to say. His species was stronger, larger, and more durable than humans. But they could not do what these creatures were doing. They could not choose to ignore their own bodies. On the second night, Torvan watched something that would stay with him forever. A Tulava group of Kethvari soldiers had been trapped in a collapsed building near the eastern wall. The Endless were closing in. The Kethvari commander ordered the area abandoned. It was too dangerous to attempt a rescue. Sergeant Derek Shaw did not listen. Shaw was not a large man by human standards. He was perhaps 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and hands scarred from years of fighting. He heard the calls for help coming from the collapsed building and made a decision without asking permission. "Shaw, stand down." Vance ordered through the communicator. "Negative, sir. There are people in there. It is suicide. Then I will die doing something useful." Shaw ran into the danger zone alone. The Endless saw him and changed direction, dozens of shadow forms converging on the single human. Shaw fired as he ran, not aiming, just creating chaos. He reached the collapsed building and began digging through the rubble with his bare hands. The Endless reached him. Torvan watched claws tear into Shaw's back. Blood sprayed across the broken stones. Shaw did not stop digging. He pulled a Kethvari soldier from the rubble, a young warrior named Kelthin. The warrior was twice Shaw's size, but Shaw lifted him over his shoulder and started running. The Endless followed. Other humans appeared, covering Shaw's retreat. They formed a wall between him and the shadow creatures, firing and fighting and dying to buy him time. Shaw made it back to the main line. He collapsed the moment he crossed the barrier, blood pooling beneath him. Medics rushed to help, but Shaw pushed him away. "The soldier?" he gasped. "Help him first." Kelthon was badly wounded, but alive. Because a human he had never met had chosen to die for him, Torvald knelt beside Shaw as the medics worked. "Why? Why did you do that?" "He's not one of yours." Shaw looked at him with fading eyes. "He's not a stranger anymore." He passed out before Torvald could respond. By the third day, the Endless changed their strategy. They stopped attacking the walls and focused all their attention on the humans. They had recognized the threat, and then the Hollow King arrived. Tarvan had heard stories about the Hollow King. It was one of the oldest of the Endless, a being that had existed since the birth of the universe. It did not have a physical form like the others. It was a presence, a darkness that filled the air and pressed against the mind. When the Hollow King appeared, every HFY soldier on the battlefield fell to their knees. Torvald felt its power crash into his thoughts like a wave. Images flooded his mind. Death, destruction, entire worlds reduced to ash. His family, his friends, everyone he had ever loved, consumed by endless darkness. The pain was unbearable. Torvald screamed and collapsed, his hands pressing against his skull as if he could push the visions out. Through the agony, he heard a voice. The Hollow King was speaking directly into their minds. "I have consumed 10,000 civilizations. I have watched stars die and galaxies fall. You are nothing. You are dust. You are already dead. You simply do not know it yet." Torvald forced his eyes open. Around him, HFY warriors writhed on the ground, overcome by the psychic assault. But the humans were still standing. They were bleeding from their noses and ears. Their faces were twisted in pain, but they were on their feet. Commander Vance stepped forward. He spat blood on the ground and looked up at the darkness where the Hollow King waited. "Is that all you have got?" The Hollow King's presence intensified. Torvald felt his consciousness fading, his mind being crushed under the weight of ancient power. "You cannot resist me, little creature. I am eternal. I am infinite. I am everything you fear." Vance laughed. It was a broken, bloody laugh, but it was real. "You want to know what I fear? I fear failing the people who count on me. I fear letting my soldiers down. I fear dying without meaning." He raised his rifle. "But I am not afraid of you. I have met things scarier than you in my nightmares. And I wake up every morning anyway." The other humans gathered behind him. They were broken, bleeding, barely alive. But they stood together, facing a god, and refused to kneel. For the first time in a million years, the Hollow King felt something it did not understand. It felt doubt. The Hollow King showed them the future. It was another attack, another weapon in the arsenal of a being older than time. The visions forced their way into every mind on the battlefield, human and HFY alike. The visions were specific. They were personal. They were designed to break what remained of their hope. Torvald saw his homeworld in flames. He saw his children running through burning streets, crying out for a father who would never come. He saw his entire species reduced to nothing but food for the endless. The HFY around him wept. Some of them begged. Some of them simply stopped moving, their minds retreating from a horror too great to face. But the humans did not break. Something else happened instead. Torvald watched their faces change. He had seen humans angry before. He had seen the cold fury in Lieutenant Cole's eyes after Kyle Mercer died. But this was different. This was something deeper. The Hollow King showed them Earth. In the vision, human cities burned. Children screamed. Families were torn apart by shadow claws. The Statue of Liberty crumbled into dust. The Great Wall of China became a tomb. Every monument, every home, every dream that humanity had ever built was consumed by darkness. The humans watched in silence. Their bodies trembled, but not with fear. Torvan felt a wave of emotion rolling off them. Something so powerful, it was almost physical. It was rage. Pure, absolute, endless rage. Commander Vance lowered his rifle. His hands were steady now. The exhaustion was gone from his face, replaced by something that made Torvan's blood run cold. "You should not have shown us that," Vance said quietly. The Hollow King laughed. "Why? Does the truth hurt? Your species is young and weak. You will fall like all the others. It is inevitable." "No." Vance shook his head. "You should not have shown us that, because now we know what we are fighting for. Before, we were just soldiers doing our duty. Now we are angry." Corporal Nathan Price stepped forward. He had been silent through most of the battle, always fighting, never speaking. Now he carried something in his hands. A metal canister connected to his plasma torch by a series of tubes. "What is that?" Torvan asked. Price looked at him. His eyes were calm. Too calm. 3 years ago, we captured an endless creature. We studied it, took it apart piece by piece. We wanted to know how to kill something that cannot die. And? Can they be killed? No. The endless exist beyond death. Destroying their physical form means nothing. They simply regenerate from the void. Price held up the canister. But we discovered something else. They can feel pain. Real pain. The kind that does not fade. And we found a compound that burns them permanently. Wounds that never heal. Scars that last forever. The Hollow King's presence shifted. Torvan felt something new in the ancient being's mind. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. Uncertainty. "You are bluffing," the Hollow King said. "No species has ever harmed us." "Then come closer and find out," Price replied. He started walking forward, alone, toward the swirling darkness where the Hollow King waited. "Price, stop!" Vance called out. Price did not stop. He kept walking, his steps steady, his grip tight on the canister. "Nathan, this is suicide!" Lieutenant Cole shouted. "I know." Price did not look back. "Cover me." The humans did not hesitate. They raised their weapons and opened fire on the Endless that stood between Price and the Hollow King. Every single one of them knew what was happening. Every single one of them knew that Price was not coming back, and not one of them tried to stop him. Torvan watched, frozen in place, as the quiet human walked into the darkness. Endless creatures lunged at him from all sides. Some were shot down by covering fire. Others reached him, tearing at his armor, ripping into his flesh. Price kept walking. Blood ran down his face. One of his arms hung at a wrong angle. But he kept moving forward, step by step, dragging himself toward the Hollow King. "Stop," the Hollow King commanded. Its voice was different now, less certain. "You cannot harm me. You are nothing." "Maybe," Price said, "but nothing is about to ruin your day." He reached the edge of the darkness where the Hollow King waited. The ancient being's form twisted, preparing to consume him like it had consumed countless others. Price activated the plasma torch. The canister hissed as the compound ignited. "For Kyle," he whispered. "For Earth, for everyone you will never touch." He drove the torch directly into the heart of the Hollow King and released the compound. The explosion was blinding. The compound spread through the Hollow King's form like fire through dry grass, burning and eating and destroying. But it was more than destruction. It was pain. Real, permanent, eternal pain. The Hollow King screamed. Torvan had never heard anything like it. The sound was not just noise. It was agony given voice, a cry that echoed across dimensions, that shook the fabric of reality itself. The endless creatures on the battlefield froze. For the first time in memory, they felt their master's suffering. When the light faded, Corporal Nathan Price was gone. There was nothing left of him but ash and memory. But the Hollow King was changed. Where there had been perfect darkness, there were now scars. Burning lines of permanent damage that would never heal, never fade, never stop hurting. "What have you done?" The Hollow King whispered. Its voice was different now, smaller, afraid. Commander Vance stepped forward. His face was wet with tears, but his voice was steady. "We hurt you. And if you ever come near our people again, we will do it again. And again. And again. For as long as it takes. For as long as we exist. We will hunt you across the stars and make you regret every moment of your endless existence." The Hollow King looked at the humans. 47 had arrived. Less than 30 remained. They were broken, bleeding, and exhausted. By any measure, they had lost, but they were still standing, still fighting, still refusing to give up. And in their eyes, the Hollow King saw something that made it feel fear for the first time in a million years. It saw the promise of more pain to come. Without a word, the Hollow King retreated. The Endless followed, pulling back from Vareth Prime like shadows fleeing the dawn. The battle was over. The humans had won. The silence after the battle was strange. For 3 days, the air had been filled with screaming and gunfire, and the terrible silence of the Endless. Now there was nothing but wind and the distant crackle of dying fires. The plains that had been covered with shadow creatures were empty. The darkness that had pressed against their minds was gone. Torvald stood on the western wall and watched the sun rise. It was the first sunrise he had seen in weeks that did not feel like a countdown to death. Below him, the humans gathered their dead. 20-8 soldiers remained from the original 47. 19 had fallen, including Corporal Nathan Price and young Kyle Mercer. The humans moved with quiet efficiency, collecting bodies, wrapping them in cloth, preparing them for transport. Torvald walked down to join them. Commander Vance stood at the center of the group. His armor was destroyed, held together by tape and willpower. Bandages covered most of his visible skin, but his eyes were clear as he looked at the row of covered bodies. "We will take them home," Vance said to his soldiers. "They deserve to rest on Earth." The humans nodded. Some of them wept openly, tears running down faces that had not shown fear even when facing the Hollow King. Others stood in silence, their expressions distant, lost in memories. Lieutenant Cole approached Torvald. She moved stiffly, favoring her left side where a deep wound had been hastily bandaged. "You fought well, Torvald. Your people should be proud." "I did nothing," Torvald said. "I watched. I survived. Your people did the real fighting. Surviving is not nothing. Living to remember is important." Cole looked at the covered bodies. Someone has to tell their stories. Someone has to remember what they did. Torvald was quiet for a moment. A question had been burning in his mind since the battle ended. Why? Why did you come here? Why did your people die for strangers? Cole did not answer immediately. She watched the other humans work, lifting bodies with gentle hands, speaking quiet words to fallen friends. "Have you ever heard of a concept called duty?" she asked. "Yes, the obligation to serve one's people. For humans, duty is different. It is not about serving our own people. It is about serving anyone who needs help." She turned to look at him. "When we heard your distress call, we did not ask what you could offer us. We did not calculate whether saving you was worth the cost. We simply came, but you knew you would die. Probably. Yes. Then why come at all? What is the point of dying for people you have never met?" Cole smiled sadly. "Because if we do not, who will? Someone has to be willing to stand in the darkness so others do not have to. Someone has to fight the monsters. If not us, then someone else's children will have to do it instead. And I would rather it be me." Torvald did not understand. He had lived for over 200 years. He had studied countless species and cultures, but he had never encountered a mindset like this. Later that day, Tarvan went to the Central Archive. It was one of the few buildings that had survived the siege intact. Inside were records dating back thousands of years, information gathered from every corner of the galaxy. He searched for files on humanity. What he found disturbed him. Most species in the galaxy had brief entries. Their histories, their technologies, their strengths and weaknesses. The entry on humanity was different. It was massive, filled with warnings and notes and strange observations. But the most disturbing part was the sealed section. Files that had been locked away by galactic authorities, marked with the highest security classifications. Torvan was a senior officer. He had clearance. He opened the files. What he read made his blood freeze. 2 centuries ago, the Endless had attempted to invade human space. They had targeted a small colony on the edge of human territory, expecting an easy victory. The colony had no military, no advanced weapons, just farmers and workers and families, trying to build a new home. The Endless expected the colony to fall in days. Instead, the humans fought back. With farming equipment, with improvised weapons, with bare hands and endless determination. They held the Endless at bay for 11 years. 11 years. By the time the Endless finally broke through, the humans had developed new weapons, new tactics, new ways to hurt creatures that should have been invincible. The Endless won the battle eventually, but the cost was staggering. Hundreds of Endless were permanently damaged, scarred by human ingenuity and spite. The file contained a message from the Endless themselves. It had been intercepted by galactic intelligence and translated with difficulty. Do not wake the humans. Do not draw their attention. Do not give them reason to fight. They do not know how to surrender. They do not know when they are beaten. They will chase you into the dark between stars and make you regret eternity. Torvan closed the file. His hands were shaking. He walked back to the landing area where the humans were preparing to leave. Their ship was patched and barely functional, but it would get them home. They were loading the last of their fallen brothers and sisters. Vance saw him approach and nodded. Torvan, I wanted to thank you before we left. You fought beside us when others ran. I did nothing special, Torvan said. You stayed. That is special enough. Torvan looked at the humans. They were laughing now, sharing rations with HFY soldiers who had come to see them off. Derek Shaw, bandaged and limping, was teaching a group of young HFY a human game involving a small ball. Lieutenant Cole was showing photographs to General Kethros, who looked uncomfortable but interested. They had just fought a battle against gods. They had lost friends and brothers and sisters. And now they were laughing, sharing, connecting with the strangers they had saved. Commander, Torvan said slowly, I read the files. The sealed records about your species. The message from the Endless. Vance's expression did not change. And they fear you. The beings who created galaxies, who have existed since the beginning of time. They fear your species. Vance was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, a small, tired smile. Good, but why? You are not the strongest species. Not the most advanced. Not the longest lived. What makes humans so terrifying to creatures like the Endless? Vance looked up at the sky. The sun was setting now, painting the clouds in shades of orange and gold. It was beautiful, Torvan realized. He had not noticed beauty in a long time. Gods fear death because it ends them, Vance said quietly. They exist forever, and the only thing that can stop them is being destroyed. So they avoid anything that might hurt them. They play it safe. They choose easy targets. He looked back at Torvan. But humans are different. We know we are going to die. Every single one of us. We live short lives, we feel pain, we lose people we love. And we keep going anyway. We run toward danger instead of away from it. We sacrifice ourselves for strangers. We fight battles we cannot win just because someone has to try. He paused. That terrifies immortals, because they cannot understand it. They cannot predict it. They look at us and see creatures who have nothing to lose, who will burn everything down just to take their enemies with them. And they know that no matter how powerful they are, beings like that will never stop coming. The ship's engines hummed to life. The humans finished their goodbyes and began boarding. Vance extended his hand. Torvan took it, holding the small human hand in his massive grip. Thank you, Commander, for everything. Take care of yourself, Torvan. And remember what you saw here. Remember what humans can do when we have something to protect. He boarded the ship. The door closed. A few moments later, the vessel lifted off and disappeared into the darkening sky. Torvan watched it go. Around him, HFY soldiers stood in silence, watching the humans leave. General Kethros appeared beside him. Well, what do you think of them now? Torvan thought about Kyle Mercer, who died saving strangers. He thought about Derek Shaw, who nearly killed himself carrying a HFY soldier to safety. He thought about Nathan Price, who walked into the heart of a god with a smile on his face. He thought about the warning in the sealed files, the terror of beings who had existed since the birth of the universe. I finally understand, Torvan said quietly. Gods fear death because it ends them. But humans? Humans make gods wish they had never been born. He turned and walked back toward the fortress, ready to begin rebuilding. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something that had seemed impossible just days ago. He felt hope.